Could US inflation be heating up again? Consumer prices increased by the most in nearly 18 months in January. CPI was up 3% year on year last month. This hotter than expected inflation report is certainly going to give policymakers at the Fed food for thought. Elliot Hentov is head of macro policy research at State Street Global Advisors. Elliot, how worried should we be by this latest inflation reading, considering some of the new measures that Donald Trump is bringing in? On the face of it, they do look pretty inflationary, don't they?
The signals are confusing, but I really hope people keep a clear head. The recent inflation data, if you look under the hood, a lot of the big weights, particularly in housing, are still going to come down. So you still have a little bit of a disinflation trend baked in, assuming everything stays neutral on the policy front. Of course, policy won't be neutral, and there you're going to have some inflationary forces. So what you could actually see is a little bit actually tempered inflation in the first few months of this year, and then picking up over the summer and beyond.
So where does this leave the Federal Reserve? Jerome Powell indicated yesterday that policy would remain restrictive for now. Is that what you expect too?
First of all, we aren't at target, so one could say that there's an argument there to keep rates where they are. Plus, Powell is no fool. He's looking into the future. He knows that there's going to be impulses there that are going to be inflationary. So why cut when you have to hike quickly, rather kind of smoothen out the cycle? Personally, I still expect one cut at least this year, probably in March, and then probably the Fed will be silent for a while.
Now, looking at the policies more closely, we've got tariffs, we've got tighter immigration policy. How inflationary are those, in your opinion?
Yeah, tariffs are generally not inflationary. They're like a tax increase. Tax increases are not inflationary because you have a one-time price adjustment, and then you have a offset in reduced demand. And that basically was how tariffs work as well. My concern with tariffs is twofold. One is, what if you have rolling tariffs? We've had rolling news of tariffs, but what if you actually get rolling tariffs week after week, month after month? Well, that could spill over into inflation expectations and pricing behavior by companies. And the second worry is, what if, even worse, you don't get rolling tariffs, but you get rolling tariff uncertainty? Well, that would start to impact business investment and how people deploy their capital. And so I'm more worried about this ongoing saga where we talk about tariffs, and we have every so often, rather than the actual imposition of the act.
And what about the tighter job market if, we have like tighter immigration control?
Yeah, we've done a lot of work internally trying to get a grasp on that. We have a little bit of, coming into this year, a little bit of slack in the US labor market. So it's a little bit of a soft spot. The problem is there's not that much. And when you really dissect it, you have certain sectoral and geographic areas where the squeeze could be on quite a bit. So in certain states, you talk about it, there's certain states like California where 7% of the labor force are basically undocumented immigrants that have arrived in the last 3 years. That's substantial. In certain industries, agriculture and so forth, it's in the double digits. So if you suddenly have a squeeze on new inflows, which you will have, wage growth in those sectors will be pronounced. The question is, what's the magnitude? Is it enough to shift overall aggregate numbers for the US economy? I am worried kind of towards the end of the year or next year that will start to really make its effect felt.
Now let's turn to Europe quickly. Croatian ECB policymaker Boris Vujicic said today that the central bank could cut rates 3 more times this year, even if the Fed doesn't move as quickly. But the focus for European policymakers is pretty different, isn't it, to what US counterparts are going through right now?
Inflation is coming down. It's going to crater, to be honest. We're not worried about inflation in Europe. Growth is the worry. I think it's nice to hear that Vujicic is basically announcing pro-growth. I wish his fiscal counterparts would be singing from the same hymn sheet, because what's really needed is some fiscal impulse. You have excess savings across Europe, particularly in core Europe, that has to be offset by dis-savings somewhere. And if it's not going to be households and it's not going to be corporates, it has to be the government. Perhaps the German election is a little bit of a turning point, but we actually need more fiscal stimulus across Europe. Otherwise, growth will come down, and inflation will be the last thing that Europeans will be worried about.
Elliot Hentov from State Street Global Advisors there. And don't forget, you can get more videos on Reuters.com.